They say 2 heads are better than 1. So how about 1,000,000 heads? Or more? That would make you unstoppable.
There's 1.6 million people that are contributing content to Shutterstock every day. That's an enormous number of creatives that are creating content and then coming to us.
That's Aiden Darné, the vice president and global head of Shutterstock Studios. Aiden's been at Shutterstock for only 7 months, but has been making waves since day one. He was brought into the picture, pun very much intended, because it was clear that Shutterstock has been sitting on a gold mine of talent.
We have about 350 million assets now as part of our archive and library. So we've had incredible amounts of fun looking through that, from royals, music, art, sports. There's so much in there.
This army of creators and collection of content is no doubt impressive. But sorting through these archives is a monumentous task. And with so much content being created every day, how can studios in need of a particular kind of image or video find that needle in a haystack? How do you align, organize, and tap into that network of more than 1,000,000 creators to tell meaningful stories? And when the industry has operated one way for so long, how do you change the narrative? I'm Jeremy Bergeron, and this is Business X Factors. Each and every week, we'll take a look at the secret sauce that takes companies to the highest levels of success and how they got there. We'll explore how these organizations are run, what's special about the people, culture, and processes it takes to make it all happen. Aiden has been producing video content for more than a decade. Prior to joining Shutterstock, he led production for a number of organizations, including launching digital studios for both Vice and Viacom.
I've been very fortunate in my career to be given opportunities, and sometimes those opportunities have presented themselves when the timing wasn't completely right, and I've had to really pony up a ton of courage, and I've been very fortunate to have a decent amount of growth in quite a short amount of time, because I haven't been content. I've wanted to continue to grow and to continue to learn and meet new creators and work with new creatives.
And Aiden's courage is paying off every day. Take a peek at his resume and you'll find an impressive list of partnerships with some of the world's most well-known media companies.
At Vice, which is really what I'm a product of, that like my incredible, meaningful, impactful years in my career there, some of the most incredible, brilliant creatives are still there. I work with amazing people and had the opportunity to launch the commercial production studio there, the branded production studio. There was 2 of us at the start, and then at the end of the year, there was over 30 people. It was an incredible time at Vice, and then had an opportunity to go and be part of launching Viacom Digital Studios, which was the first digital production studio within Viacom. We were producing for major, massive brands, MTV, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon. And I just loved it, and just loved launching production teams and running production teams.
Over the course of his career, Aiden has seen media evolve and change. But one thing has remained. There's always been a growing need for high-quality stock and archive content. Think about the last commercial you watched, article you read, or movie you streamed. Did you know that a lot of those assets rely on stock photography and video? In every industry, businesses need images for advertisements, briefings, corporate videos, and even Hollywood films tap into archives for standard footage. Every movie from Forrest Gump to 21 Jump Street to The Shining to Iron Man, the list goes on and on. These films have relied on stock footage to add in some finishing touches and depth. Of course, there are folks within those industries, Hollywood or otherwise, whose job it is to create original content. But for some of the more universal scenes, companies such as Shutterstock have been the go-to source for stock imagery and videos for 2 decades. It's clear that Shutterstock Studios does in many ways have a leg up over the competition. How do you bring in big names like Netflix and Marvel, right, to use your content?
Yeah, thankfully they're all using the ready to use in stock assets already. And as the studio business, it's just about the positioning, and through multiple different angles, whether it is the global production infrastructure, whether it's more directors, whether it's the creator network, we can function as a solution for partners. And we've often been asked, are you a creative agency, you're a production studio? And describing us as a creative agency, but it does us a bit of a disservice because we're actually a lot more than that. And so we like to position ourselves as a solution for our partners. And whether that is for straight production services or a creative strategy and content strategy, or through the network or through a director network or through a global production team, we're hopeful that there's one area that's going to prove helpful for our partners.
Since its founding in 2003, Shutterstock has thrived in this role. The company has methodically built up its network of contributors, which now includes 1.6 million people in more than 150 countries. Those creators have seen their content downloaded for use more than 1 billion times.
Before I joined, there was a fantastic production infrastructure that was just cranking out this social content, branded content, huge volumes of it, and doing really good work. Really, the success was there.
It had at its disposal untold amounts of resources, and it was time to start putting that incredibly valuable content to good use.
I was speaking to a friend of mine who's the CRO of Shutterstock, and he was brand new there, and he was talking about launching a production unit globally. And it sounded fascinating. There's 1.6 million people that are contributing content to Shutterstock every day. That's an enormous number of creatives that are creating content and then coming to us. It's an interesting model, particularly around connectivity and the need for kind of global infrastructure. And I was drawn to his ambition and the fundamental kind of the heart of the studio having this network for me was creating the possibility to create quite a dent within the industry for creating branded or brand funded content within this network that they had. So that was my immediate draw, is having this enormous amount of talent approaching us and having it completely global.
Shutterstock had creators around the world, but Aiden and other executives at the company knew that their potential wasn't being fully tapped into. Aiden's plan was bold. He would create a production studio that could produce original content for clients rather than only offering an archive of unspecified footage or images that may or may not be of use. Aiden envisioned a future where Shutterstock's creators were the ones that big companies called on when they were doing a photo or video shoot. There was a little problem, though. That is far from how the industry has been run up to this point. When a company wants a new ad campaign or a studio needs to film a scene, they rely on production staff that is either hired in-house or from a trusted art house production studio. These teams have long resumes, and they have required big budgets to do most of the heavy lifting to make the assets companies need. Meanwhile, the local creators that Shutterstock has tapped into are utilized only for the small stuff and background shots, despite the fact that many of them could be used for so much more.
This network that we're plugging into, out of that 1.6 or 5 million now, we have about 20,000 of those that we've qualified as part of this global creator network. It's photographers, videographers, producers, directors, writers, animators, illustrators, and producers as well. So at our kind of lowest investment level, we function as a kind of marketplace connecting creators with a brief. And we're getting to a point where that is scaling even bigger than what it is currently.
Having 20,000 qualified people ready to jump in when a brand needs a creator is already a pretty massive win. And you would think that having that many people and that much content at the ready would make this move toward creating original content an easy one. But that has not been the case. As Shutterstock began to make this shift, creating Shutterstock Studios, it's clear that there's an opportunity there. I'm curious about resistance, right? Did things come up when you came on and began to kind of launch this and create this? Like, did things come up where you were like, I don't know. Was there that sort of thing, or was it, hey, you found a path and there was smooth sailing until today?
Oh my God, mate. No, it's been resistance everywhere. The biggest resistance. We're daily having to work on changing the perception from the industry of who we are. Because the beauty is that we have these existing relationships with the massive media companies, agencies, and studios. But the horrible side of it is we have these existing relationships with these studios and agencies, and because they see us in a certain light, and they've been working with us for a long time in that type of relationship. So it's a daily kind of obstacle.
It didn't seem to matter that Shutterstock was connected to extremely talented people all over the world. Clients weren't eager to hand over their big budget projects to relative unknowns. The vastness of Shutterstock network, the competitive advantage that separated it from everyone else, was also close to dooming it. It seemed impossible for clients to judge the merits of thousands of people when they could simply tap into their own resources who they already knew and trusted. The Shutterstock network needed a chance to prove itself. After the break, find out where that chance came from and how the company and the industry at large has responded. Stick with us. Between content marketing, film and television production, ad agencies, and more, billions of dollars are spent and hundreds of billions of content are created annually. Take Netflix, for example. In 2020, it was reported that Netflix would spend $17.3 billion on original content. And by 2028, that number would be up to $26 billion per year. So clearly, getting into the original content game was a smart business move for Shutterstock to take on. But the original content world has been insular for decades, with only a select few people, agencies, and production companies really given the opportunity to actually create and distribute content. Newbies, unknowns, and many creators overseas, all the people that Shutterstock were amazing at cultivating into a creative network, were excluded from the party. Something needed to shake up the industry, and something did.
As a result of the pandemic, people couldn't go out and shoot for a long time last year globally. So I think being an archival and licensing stock company, we probably in some ways really benefited. There's a higher demand for content without the ability to go and shoot it themselves. So I think that, again, is a huge positive. And it's really set the level playing field, because particularly in emerging markets, there's amazing talent, there's amazing producers and amazing cinematographers, especially, and directors. So I say this all the time, it's like that was a huge positive that's come from COVID, is like everyone's Rolodexes have broadened and everyone's eyes have opened up. We were able to fully capitalize on that through this network of creators and through the global production team. I have teams in Sydney, Tokyo, Seoul, London, LA, New York, and Toronto. We were able to capitalize on it because we were able to continue to create content, because our partners' content objectives didn't waver, they didn't really change. And that, plus the opportunity for us to supplement the creative process with our stock, became quite a compelling offering for clients, because we could go out and shoot original content to be part of a spot, but also we could very quickly and very cost affordably pull from our stock library as well.
Across the globe, Shutterstock's network was now being tapped into to produce originals, and they were doing an amazing job. From Amazon's first ever commercial that was developed on the ground in Turkey, or GMC shooting gorgeous production photos throughout Canada, and everything in between. Shutterstock is putting forward the right people at the right time.
We put forward a director, the agency loved him. We went and shot 2 spots, one 30-second spot in New York and one 30-second spot in Guangzhou, China. And he directed both of them, did the one in China remotely overnight on a Saturday. The client and agency tuned in overnight via remote video village. And that was a big step for us to be able to do that type of sophisticated production. And that is a very complex project. I wouldn't go into the detail of it, but the kind of international element of it is really tricky. And so that even came quicker than I was expecting, that type of thumbs up that what I'm looking to do is probably right for the marketplace.
Now that we're entering a post-lockdown world, though, it's natural to wonder if these big agencies and clients will fall back into their old ways, leaving the network of willing and able creators in the wind. Aiden doesn't think so.
The post-pandemic era is going to be great for production and advertising. I think the world's going to open up. But even in the post-pandemic era, I think the great thing that happened during the pandemic, if there was anything that was great, it was people couldn't be lazy and get on planes. So it meant it gave the global creative industry an opportunity and a chance to step up, because we all had to brush through our Rolodexes. We couldn't take 20 people to Guangzhou, China. That, I think, is a huge positive, because directors, cinematographers, producers, global production teams and global production companies really were able to have a go. And I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I think even post-pandemic, people will recognize now, well, look at the productivity and the work that was made during a pandemic. Why would you want to spend 20-30% on the budget on travel when you can all do it remotely? And even for meetings, why would I need to fly to LA quickly for that hour-long meeting? I think that's a real benefit to the industry and to the environment especially.
Creating original content goes beyond these quick spots or fast turnaround shoots, though. And Aiden and Shutterstock have identified another area that it can win in, thanks to the vastness of its network and the broadness of its content. We're
also at the moment in development on long-form original documentary programming as well. So within Shutterstock Studios, this isn't fully announced yet, but not necessarily a secret, but we are looking this year to really get into producing original documentary programming as well. And that is really special and unique for us, because we're using all of the archive as a starting point to spark the idea. So we've had incredible amounts of fun looking through that, from royals, music, art, sports. There's so much in there.
Wow.
So we've been using all of that as a starting point to look at original documentary and potentially even fiction as well down the line. But that's the breadth of the studio offering, which again is probably why I was drawn to this, because we were challenging the notion of what a production studio is, or at least a global production studio is.
Interest in documentaries and docu-series is certainly on the rise. And part of what makes these films so special is also what makes them hard to produce. The fact that you need to go back in time to tell a full and true story. Shutterstock is the game changer here, and its X factor, its network of creatives, immense amount of content, and decentralized creation approach is only growing stronger and bringing more and more people into the fold. After all, it's those who were there who have the stories to tell, and Shutterstock is giving them a chance to be a part of bringing those stories to life by democratizing content of the future. You said 350 million assets, and you're drawing from these assets to come up with potentially original, creative documentary style content. Are there teams of people at Shutterstock evaluating the content, saying, ooh, this is good, or is it really more subjective?
The process isn't as gnarly as you'd think. We have ideas about what would be good for documentaries this year or what people are watching. So then we go and mine through what we have. And we created about 55 log lines in about 4 weeks, through that process of looking at all of the content that we have. And as I said, it really is so diverse. There's so much amazing content in there. And also there was a recent acquisition of more archive in London, largely not digitized, not seen as well. So it's a bit of a treasure chest in a lot of ways. And that is a very natural, again, there's it really speaks to the studio, because it's a very natural progression for us to get into that business, because we know content as good as anyone as a licensing company. Our strategists in-house are phenomenal as well. So if you think at the core of the business, we've been receiving and reviewing content for nearly 20 years. It's a very natural fit, not just for us to be creating original programming, but for us to be a studio, because who knows content better or as good as us, given that have 350 million assets that we've been mining through for 20 years.
20 years in business, generations worth of content, and 1 million plus people adding more to the pile every single day. This is definitely an accomplishment to hang your hat on. But Shutterstock doesn't see an end to the photo album it's created. There are always stories to tell. Brand stories, personal stories, happy, sad, and everything in between. Stories for the future and stories to bring back from the past. For so long, the power to put those stories out to wide audiences has rested in the hands of a select few major brands, Hollywood studios, and mega influencers. Shutterstock's X Factor has been its ability to democratize the content creation space by cultivating the best network of creators around the globe. And the network is always growing, even to include those from the past. It's the ultimate democratization of content. And just like the creators of today and businesses of tomorrow, everyone is benefiting from Shutterstock's X Factor. You've been listening to Business X Factors, brought to you by Highland. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast app. We'd also be so grateful if you rated and reviewed us on Apple Podcasts. This helps ensure that more amazing listeners like you find this show. Thanks for listening. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy Bergeron, and I'll catch you next time on Business X Factor.